Welcome to the Graceful Exit podcast. I'm Kimberlee Hoertz, founder of the Graceful Exit, created to educate, empower, and support women as they navigate divorce. Beginning with us, we are putting a stop to the divorce stigma through meaningful conversations about the emotional and endearing experience divorce often brings. My hope is that you'll follow along on this journey and join our community of women navigating divorce with grace. So today we are here interviewing Shanda. She is our Director of Community and Connections at the Graceful Exit. She too has been through and navigated a divorce on the other side. And so if you can just give us a little bit of background on your journey and where you're at today. And then we'll be going through the most questions that both her and I have had over our past journey over the last, Shanda's been divorced almost 10 years and myself 4 years, and it seems as though the questions from women are extremely common, and so we'll be discussing those more further today. So Shanda, you want to give a little bit of background?
Sure. Yeah, thank you for having me. So I was married for 14 years. I had 4 children with my former spouse, and when my oldest child was 9 and my youngest was 9 months, we separated, and that has been about 10 years ago now. And it has, the divorce process was not easy for me. Mm-hmm. It was really difficult, and I didn't feel like I knew where to turn for help. I didn't feel like I had resources. I was so naive, and there was so much I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And so it was really tough.
And remind me, what age did you get married, and then what age were you divorced?
So I first was married really young, when I was 22. Mm-hmm. And I had my first child when I was about 26. So really young.
Do you think age played a part in the divorce or post-divorce?
I think definitely my experience played a part in, I had never been in a healthy relationship, really, before I got married. I had never seen firsthand a lot of healthy relationships modeled in my life. Mm-hmm. And so definitely, I think, I have children now. I would encourage them as a parent to wait until they're older and have more experience, mm-hmm. Before they get married. But, maybe if I'd known a little bit more about relationships and kind of the red flags of abusive relationships or things like that, my experiences would have helped me.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such an important part, especially about the Graceful Exit, is that we want to minimize divorce from happening. And I think, to your point, it starts with those younger generations, the teens, the tweens, the college-age students, because so many of us we've helped along the way have come back with the fact that they didn't have education. They didn't know what a healthy relationship was, or what were signs of domestic violence or a narcissist. Had we had that information prior to marriage, perhaps we wouldn't have been in this situation.
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah. And then how old were you when you got divorced?
Let's see, probably 36, 37.
Okay. And did you have any idea how to navigate divorce?
No, I had no idea. So I come from, divorce. My parents, grandparents, some aunts and uncles, mm-hmm. Younger siblings have been divorced. But for my entire marriage, I have always lived away from my family. Oh. And so nobody close to me, nobody around me had been divorced. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know where to turn. It was extremely difficult to know what to do, to know the steps to take, and to know where to find, a good lawyer, all the different
Counselor.
things. Counseling, yeah. Yes. I tried and failed. I interviewed several attorneys before I found one, and then ended up going with someone else eventually after several years in California. I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but my divorce took quite a long time. And so it was tricky. It was tough. It was a lot of...
Did you end up using a lawyer or mediating? I forget.
So we did both.
Both.
We tried mediation at first, and that didn't work because, in order to mediate, you need to have two people willing to work together. And so then we ended up in court, and then we had an appointed mediator through the court system.
Okay. And then how long did your divorce take?
So
I know you're still navigating it, right? Because when you have kiddos, you seem to navigate the trenches of it until they're at least 18 years of age.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I think so. So, my divorce was bifurcated, which means you're legally not married after 3 years. And then it took at least a year for all the custody and financials and everything to be worked out beyond that. Plus, sometimes, unfortunately, you have to go to court for other reasons. And so, it's been a journey.
Yeah. What would you say is probably the hardest part it has been through the divorce?
The hardest part for me definitely is worrying about my kids. When... So I've shared my personal story on our blog just last week, which was a scary decision for me to make. But if anyone's interested in that story, it's there to read. But my decision to seek a divorce was pretty sudden, and my kids were really young. I mentioned before my oldest was 9 and my youngest was just a baby.
And you had 2 in between.
2 in between, 4 kids. And I was terrified for them because I experienced divorce and it was hard. Yeah. Sorry, I get emotional.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
But I just wanted to spare them from all that heartache and all that pain. And unfortunately, I couldn't do that. But my kids definitely just worrying about their well-being and their emotional and mental health has been the hardest part for me. I always worry, and they were so young at the time. I didn't really feel like I could share everything with them, so I tried to protect them from a lot. I tried to keep my pain from them, and
it's hard.
Now they're older, so 2 of my oldest 2 boys are adults, and I have another teenager and then a 9-year-old, and we have conversations now about it because I feel like they've reached an age where they can understand and, maybe hear some of the things that I wouldn't have wanted to share when they were younger.
Yeah.
But
I think that's so important to notice. We try so hard as moms, single moms, to parents of divorce. It's just to try and protect them from as much as they can, but we can't always do that. Kids often have their own journey and have to go through it too, and it's just being a sounding board for them. When they have these questions, I always struggle, when is the right time to tell them, and how old should they be, and how much do you tell them, because it's hard, because part of it is an adult issue, some of it, but then some of it needs to be transparent so that to your point earlier, you don't want history repeating itself. You've lived through this. You've lived through unhealthy marriages and divorces in your family. For me, I don't want my children to go through this in their lives. And that's part of why I always feel so passionate about being transparent about some of these issues, because I cannot let history repeat itself. Not with education that we have today. I feel like we have to stop the cycle. So I think in your case, I know you are now in such a healthy relationship. So can you kind of describe what that looks like for you and how you ended up getting to the other side?
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to talk about. Of course,
Yes.
I'll share that. So I was determined after my divorce that I was not going to get in another relationship.
Yes.
I thought, I will never get married again. I will never, and then fortunately, heaven stepped in, and I met my now husband through mutual friends. We've been married close to 6 years. So if you do the math, I was a single mom for a few years, and then met my husband and got married. And I think the best part about that relationship in my life, not the best, but one of the best, is my children being able to see and have modeled for them close up on a regular basis what a healthy, loving, respectful relationship looks like. Because I think that is the biggest gift that I could ever give them.
I agree. And that's what I try to communicate to so many women out there, is that there is hope on the other side. Divorce is hard, really, really hard. And we don't want to depict any of that and not talk about it. But what we do want to stress is the joy that you can find on the other side, and be hopeful that there are good men out there, that there are healthy relationships. But I think at least part of my journey, and maybe you had it too, is the advice that I give women is you need to work on yourself first. You can't make another relationship whole unless your cup is filled. So whether that's with your kids or with your soon-to-be husband or spouse, I feel like you have to work on yourself first. For me, I ended up taking 6 months off my corporate career where I was going through it to get that intense counseling that I needed to focus on my mental health, to make sure that I was stable. I was curious, did you do any of that in your journey?
Oh, absolutely. I think you're so right. One of the benefits I've found from going through such difficult experiences is that I am now stronger than I ever knew was possible.
Yeah.
Adversity, there's a positive side to adversity, and it is that we grow and we learn and we become even better versions of ourselves. At least I feel like that's your experience and my experience, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, I don't necessarily have to feel grateful for all the really tough experiences that I've been through, but what I am grateful for is the result of having gone through those, and the only way through is through sometimes. But yeah, so when I divorced, I was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. I hadn't worked outside the home. I had not completed my education. I didn't know anything about our finances as a family. My former husband controlled all of those things. And so I entered counseling, first of all, and I had my children enter counseling because that was really important for us and really helpful to know how to navigate immediate trauma.
Yeah.
Because we'd never experienced anything like that before. And so gaining the tools to navigate that was really important and really helpful for me and for my children. And then I went to school, and I could only manage, and it wasn't immediately. I didn't start school immediately, but I did an online program, and I could only manage one class at a time, and I would, be up until 2 a.m. studying or doing homework or writing papers. But being able to finish my education and support my family was important, and something that helped me become a better version of myself and become stronger, so that when I did enter another relationship, I felt better about myself. So those two things, along with a lot of self-care. It's tough, I think, when you're in a divorce situation to place an importance on self-care, but I truly feel like it's so important. And so I would take time for myself every week. I had so many angel friends and neighbors and family step in and help me with my kids, so that I could weekly attend a special place in my church called the Temple. And so I would go there every week and just have time to exercise, or hike or do all the things I really enjoy doing to help me.
I think part of what I found a lot from women is they often lose themselves in their marriage, and post-divorce, it's a time for them to really reinvent themselves and find out who they really were. I know for me too, it's finding those passions that you're about, and then your outlets too, I think is so important during that healing period, is finding your voice again, finding out who you used to be, or more so who you want to be now post-divorce. So I think it's a lot of healing, but I think it's extremely important to take that time out for yourself. I know as moms, single moms, especially with 4 kids, it's hard. It's so hard. And we often have that mom guilt of leaving our children behind. But again, if we can't take care of ourselves, or our cup's not full, how are we going to be able to provide for them? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think that's super important. So part of our name is called the Graceful Exit. And so I'm curious to know, what does grace mean to you, if you had to define it?
Yeah, I love this question. The name, which I think is an amazing name, is a lot of what drew me to wanting to be involved in the Graceful Exit. Mm-hmm. So it's always been, grace has always been a special word for me. It's my daughter's middle name.
Oh, I don't know if I knew that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And so I had an experience when I was kind of in the muck and the mire and the depths of all the garbage, and I received a note from a girlfriend, and she, said so many kind things, but one of them was, I see you carrying yourself with grace through this, difficult time, and I'm grateful for your example. And I saved that note. That's always been really special to me. For me, grace is something that I always want to try and give other people, but also something I want to try and give myself. And that's not always easy to do.
Yes.
But I feel like, that's for me an important principle in life. And I don't feel like that lesson is linear. I feel like it's a non-linear concept. So sometimes I feel like I'm up here with it, and sometimes I'm down here. But as long as I'm generally headed in the right direction with granting grace to myself and to others, I feel like that's okay.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that, because I too think originally I came up with the name because I wanted my kids to be able to look them in the eye and said I did my best and I did it with grace, meaning that they would not be ashamed of who I was or how I navigated this divorce, because I had a choice to go down an ugly path, and I chose not to, because I had the 4 kids, and 10 years from now I want to be able to tell my story. But then as I navigated the divorce, I ended up getting that tattoo on my wrist of grace, because it's a constant reminder to myself that I need to give myself grace. This is hard. Divorce is not easy. It's not something I would wish upon my worst enemy. And it's important that I take each day to give myself that grace, whether that looks like, right now I'm dealing with health issues, so I may not be at my ideal weight, but at least my mental health is at a good place, so giving yourself grace in different ways throughout your day, I think, is important.
I agree. And, another thing, in my situation, there was a lot of hurt, and it still continues, abuse, and, different things without going into detail. I feel like trying to hold space to feel grace for my former spouse is something that I really try and do. Again, it's not always easy, especially when those hurts keep happening. But what I try and do is just bring myself back to trying to find empathy. So I feel like people who hurt other people generally do it because they're hurting. I don't I think that's generally the case. And so for me, when I try and step back and feel empathy towards, those people and their situation, it is easier for me to extend that grace.
I agree. It's a difficult journey, but again, if you can have the empathy and compassion for others, especially those that have hurt you along the way, I think forgiveness and grace come a long way out of it. And my hope is that, someday I will be able to get to that point, but it's a journey, and that hurt doesn't necessarily go away at times. And to your point, if it's constantly a reminder, it's hard. It's hard, but it's so important to know that these women will get through it. What is probably the most tangible advice or hope you can give women going through it?
Oh, that's a good question. So for me, I really did try, as difficult as things were, I really did try to always feel gratitude, to try and find things to be grateful for, to try and express gratitude, to try and write down my thoughts of gratitude, because that helped me find hope for a better tomorrow, for a better future for me, a better relationship, a better future for my children. Gratitude really, really helped me. So I have this bracelet. When you said tangible, I don't necessarily think of hope as something tangible, but I do have this bracelet that some dear girlfriends gave to me kind of as I was coming out of the most difficult part of my divorce. And it says blue skies. I don't know if you can see it, but it says blue skies. And it's just a reminder to me to look forward, to have hope, to be grateful for the blue skies that are coming. Because we're all going to experience, yucky storms and really difficult things. Divorce is one of the most difficult. But remembering to have gratitude, and again, not necessarily for the pain that you're feeling or the hard things that you're going through, or the pain that might be inflicted on your children, but that you can be grateful for the things that are going right. You have your health, you have a home, you have friends and family who love you. I really tried to anchor myself in three things really, but one first was my faith, and then my family and my friends, and that has helped me immensely.
So I have a question. If you had to go back and tell your younger self some advice, what would that have been? Any idea?
Oh gosh.
Or more so, what is some advice that you give your daughters today? Because how old are your
So I
girls?
have one daughter and she's 15. So right about dating age. And we do actually talk a lot about relationships and healthy relationships. And I I have other experiences in my life before I was married that were negative, and I want her to learn from all of my experiences. And so we just try to have open dialogue, and often, even though we've talked about something, maybe in the past, I try to have those same important conversations often, because I really want them to stick. And I really want her to understand and do things differently than I did them, because, as moms, we're mama bears. We want to save our children from any pain they may experience, recognizing that they are going to exercise their agency and they're going to make their own choices and, forge their own path and learn, their own lessons. But if there's anything I can do, I think it's have more conversations, have relevant conversations, have the hard conversations, and do it often. And I think, sorry, I try not to cry, but I get so emotional.
It's a hard journey, and that's
it
what people
is.
need to understand. This isn't easy, and it takes a lot of courage for one to come on here and talk about it. So I appreciate you being so vulnerable. But I think your story is so incredibly powerful and will help so many women. So I just appreciate you being here for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope so. I think if, one person can be helped, then it's worth putting myself out there and sharing something difficult. But I was just going to say the most important thing that I can do for my children as I'm teaching them is just show them unconditional love. They may make really dumb decisions.
Mm-hmm. They often do.
Sometimes, right? But as long as they know that they're loved no matter what, I feel like that's huge as far as their positive development. So if that's what I could do, that's what I try.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important to have the vulnerability and transparency. Sometimes as parents, we often pretend like we have it all together, or that, we've been through life and we know what we're talking about. But I think it's times where we can share our painful stories at times, and our struggles and where we went wrong, and just be human to them, I think is so important. And to have those conversations, to your point, very often and relevant to what they're going through. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then the last question is, I'm curious, why were you attracted to come working for the Graceful Exit? And can you share a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So I feel like the way we met was, divine intervention.
Yes.
So my sister-in-law is a friend of yours from years ago, and I know you guys recently reconnected, and I think she shared with you maybe a bit about me, and she shared with me a little bit about you and about the Graceful Exit, and I just immediately knew that this was something I wanted to be a part of. Excuse me. Because I just have such a desire to help women in difficult situations. I've had the opportunity over the last several years to be an advocate for women, and help them through a variety of different situations, not just divorce. And that is so fulfilling for me. If there's anything I can do to just be a listening ear, or to be an advocate, or to be someone who shows love and compassion, I want to be the person. And this allows me to do that, and to help women find the resources that for me were difficult to find. And I really feel like it's so important for women to hear and to know from other women that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And that there is hope, and there is joy on the other side, and there's opportunity for growth. And so that's why.
Yeah, and I think we're doing just that. I think I've noticed too is the sense of community that we have built even over the last 3 months since the launch. It's women feel like they finally have a safe place, a voice to share their story if they choose to do so, but then, a place to navigate all the resources you would absolutely need, and not necessarily just going through divorce too, because we do have marriage resources as well, but it's this sense of community that I think all of us were lacking while going through probably the most horrific time in our life. And so that's why it was extremely important when I asked you to come on, that you had that firsthand experience. You have that empathy and compassion for women, so you know what we need to build. So do you mind telling them a little bit about what you do for the Graceful Exit?
Sure, I would love to. So I'm Director of Community and Connection. I reach out and invite other women who have gone through divorce or are going through divorce to perhaps share their story, come on the podcast, or write for the blog.
Why do you think that is so important, that we have other versions of women's stories
I
in your
think
perspective?
having connection, well, this is my opinion. I feel like having connection strengthens us. And it's a tough thing to go through. You need strength. You need to be buoyed up. You need to be lifted up. And I feel like this is a community of lifters, women who care and will support. And I feel like sharing our stories helps us to know we're not alone, and helps us heal. It's a healing process to get kind of out of our bodies and out of our minds what we've gone through and what we've experienced, to put it down on paper or to say it out loud.
It's hard.
It's hard, but it's healing. I feel like most things that are really good for us are also pretty difficult. And I believe that to be true in this case. I feel like I'm happy that and grateful to you that you've started this platform and are working so diligently to make it available to women everywhere. So thank you. I'm happy to be a part of the Graceful Exit.
Thank you. So that concludes this episode, and we hope you guys enjoyed it and just had a sense of community and knowing that you're not alone in going through this. And I thank Shanda so much for sharing your story and having the courage to come on. And we hope that you guys follow along throughout our community and journey. Thank you.